In this video, we're going to build a terminal user interface, but more importantly, we're going to build a responsive terminal user interface. We're going to do this using OpenTUI, and in this case, I've got OpenTUI Core installed in my project. There's a bunch of other facets to that with React and Solid and things of that nature, but for right now, we're just going to stick with Core. The only code I've got written up already is this theme, which is really just a key value structure of colors, so I don't have to type all those. And I've got that imported into my index. Now from our core application, or our core library, we are going to bring in a few things, most notably create CLI renderer. We're going to bring in box renderable. There we go. Text renderable. And ASCII font renderable, because every TUI needs a big obnoxious text at the top. And then we're going to have one type here for CLI renderer. Okay, first thing we're going to do is build our obnoxious header. So I'm going to call that const build header. It's going to be a function. It's going to take in our renderer, which will be a type of CLI renderer. So this is going to be our first box renderable of many. So const header equals new box renderable. And a renderable, if you're coming from a front-end background, it's a div. It's just a thing that exists, and you can make it live where and look how you want it to. So what it's going to take in is our renderer, which is passed in, and then whatever options we want to pass into that. So I'm going to give this guy an ID of header, a flex direction. So we're using flexbox terminology here, but technically OpenTUI uses yoga layout, which is like flex anywhere. It doesn't, not even necessarily only in the terminal, it can be anywhere. So our direction is going to be column. We'll do align items, again, borrowing from the flex terminology. We'll say center. And then, only because I've done this before, you would probably have to experiment a little bit. I'm doing a padding top of 1 and a height of 9. So we now have this header, which in essence is a div if you're coming from the browser world. And now we're going to add some stuff into that, namely our text. So we're going to say header.add. And then we have to have our element here. So this is going to be our new ASCII font renderable. And just like the box renderable, this is going to take in our renderer and then some options. In our case, I'm going to give it an ID of title, a text. So this is like inner HTML. I'm just going to say TUI. That's the name of our awesome TUI. The font, in my case, I'm going to go block, but there's a bunch of options here. I'll try to remember to come back and take a look at those. A color, and this is where I get to skip some typing and say theme.blue. And I'm also going to set a max width of 100% as a string. Cool. So now that's like, you could consider that like our H1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an H2. So I'm also going to say header.add new text renderable. So this isn't going to be an ASCII font thing. And of course, that's going to take in our renderer and our options. And here I'm going to say ID is subtitle, and the content is terminal user interface. And then for our foreground color, so that's going to be FG, we'll say theme.dim, which is just like a light blue. And now all we got to do is return our header. Okay, so we have this component, this header component that we built, but now we need to get it, in the actual application. So I'm going to create a function down here called build TUI. Just like our previous one, it's going to take in a renderer, which would be a type of CLI renderer. I'm going to create yet another div or box renderable. So I'm going to say main equals new box renderable. It's going to take in that renderer and our options. This will be an ID of main. And this is mostly going to take up our screen. So width 100 as well as height, flex direction, is going to be column. We'll give this a background color of theme.bg. So now again, main is like another div, so we can just add stuff to it. So main.add, and then we'll run our build header, and that'll take in our renderer. Now in this one, this is going to be our entire build the user interface. So we're also going to add renderer root.add main. So into this guy, we can add any other things we built. So right now we've only got a header. Let's say we've got a footer. So we'll say main.add footer and then renderer root add main. Okay, so now we need to kick everything off. So I'm just going to create a main function. So main is going to be async, and that's going to equal a function. And this is going to create our renderer that we've been passing around everywhere. This will be a wait, create CLI renderer. The only thing I'm going to put in here is some initial options. I'm going to say exit on Control C, true. And let me get rid of that. Okay, and then once we've got that up in place, we can call our build TUI. If you remember, build TUI is this guy right here, so it's building our main, and then it's adding whatever we want to the main. And into that, we'll just pass our renderer. Now, once we have that in place, the only thing we need to do is say renderer.start. And then down here, I'm just going to kick everything off by calling our main function. Now, the way I'm going to run this in the terminal, I'm going to try to get a live reload situation going on here. I don't know if it's going to work necessarily. I'm going to say bun, double tack, watch, index.ts. And there you go. We have our TUI ASCII obnoxious header thing all working just great. Now, there's nothing responsive about this. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the box renderable, text renderable, and of course get the obligatory ASCII header in there. So now let's look at making some responsive stuff. So we're going to create so we've got our header. Let me just collapse this guy for now. And we've got our build TUI. So I'm going to drop this right here. So we're going to make like a panel on the left and a panel on the right. They're going to take up 50% of the screen each. And then when we resize, just like in a browser, we want them to take up 100% of the width. So I'm going to say const build panel A. It's going to be a function. You guessed it. It takes in the renderer. Panel is going to be a new box renderable. So we're just creating a div, right? Or something very similar to a div. So taking our renderer and our options. In this case, I'll say the ID is panel A. I'm going to give this a border just so we can see it. Border style, we'll say rounded. Border color will be theme.border. Give it that 50% width. And this is where we're going to have some dynamic stuff later, but for now we're just trying to get two divs or box renderables left and right side by side. Flex direction will be column, and again, just because I've messed with this before, I'm going to have a padding of 1, and I'm going to give it a title. This is very similar to like a legend in a field set. You'll see it in just a second, and I'll say panel A, and then we'll just return the panel. Okay, so before we get on to panel B, let's get this in the page. And since I'm going to have a panel A and a panel B, and I want them to flow in their own flex space, I'm going to create something that renders those two before we add it to the build TUI. So this is going to be const build content area. I don't know. We'll call it that for now. It's going to take in, surprise, surprise, a renderer, which is a type of CLI renderer. So const content, and again, a new box renderable. Takes in the renderer, and then we have our options. And in this case, I'm going to say ID is content, flex direction is column, and flex grow is 1. Now we're going to grab our two guys, and we're going to put them in. I'm going to call it row. I'm going to call it a row. So const, we'll call it top row. It's also a new box renderable. We'll ID this guy with top row. So now this is our first row flex direction. So we're talking about flowing left to right. We're going to do a gap. Again, all of this is borrowed from the flex terminology. We're going to do a flex grow of 1. Now all we're going to do is say our top row, we're going to add our build panel A, which takes in our renderer. And then later we'll come back and we'll do build panel B. And you know what? I didn't get the 1 in there. And then we'll just say content.add top row. So now we've got our content container, our top row container, and our build panel A, or panel A, inside of that top row. So now we can come down here to our build TUI and say main.add build content area and just pass in that same renderer. Okay, let's see if we get something. Nope, we didn't get nothing. And that is because I did not return content here. Okay, so there's our panel A. So we're going to create panel B, and I'm just going to copy this guy, drop it in here, say build panel B, make this panel B, panel B. It's probably going to work. I may be messing something up. So now we're going to come down here to our build content area, and we're going to say top row dot add build panel B of renderer. We save that, and you can see we've got panel A and panel B, and they're sort of responsive, but when I get down here to these very small spaces, I really want them to finally wrap. At this level, I wanted to say, well, panel A should take up its own row, and panel B should take up its own row. So let's make that happen. So we're going to come down here to our main, and what we need is a resize event listener. And we can create that pretty easily by saying render.on, and we just say resize. And then we need, it to do something. So what we can do is set up this function here, and we're automatically going to get the width as the first argument to that function. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass that to our own function called handle resize. Let me just break this out a little bit. Where we'll pass in the renderer and that width. So now we need to create that. And that's going to be a Z. That's going to be a Z. So we're getting our renderer and our width. So now we need to get our elements. So very much like a document query selector, we need to get those. So the way we can do that, say const top row equals renderer dot root find descendant by ID. Now you see while I was given all those IDs, we'll say top row, and we'll also do this for panel A and panel B. Okay, so we've got access to all of those elements or components on the screen. Right off the bat, just because I've run into this before, I'm going to say if not top row, which means like something really went wrong, we're just going to return. Like we don't want to deal with that. Now, if our width, and I'm going to say if it's less than 100, we're going to change the direction of our top row. If you remember, our top row was our first one with a direction of row, which is why these guys are side by side. So if it's less than 100, we're going to say our top row dot flex direction equals column. Honestly, that's might even be enough, but we're going to say panel A dot width is equal to 100%. And I'll just to appease the TypeScript gods, say if panel A, and we'll do the same for panel B. Else, and this is basically like, let's just put it back the way it was, 50% and 50%. Okay, so there's our UI. Let's blow this up. Let's make it really small in the corner, and you can see now they're both with 100% and they're stacked on top of each other. And if I go full screen, now they're side by side again. So we have, in effect, created a responsive terminal UI. And just for good measure, because I think I'm going to return to these guys, I am going to drop in this build footer, and we're going to put a little footer on the bottom that does not change. It's always going to be 100%. So just come down here after build content area and say main.add build footer. And the only text I have in there right now is footer here. So we'll save that. You can see the footer down here. And if I pull this out, the footer stays the same. If I go over there, the footer stays the same. If I make it really wide, the footer stays the same. So there you have it. That is our responsive terminal user interface using OpenTUI.